the once great but now declining faction that at one point almost controlled all of Calradia. At the start of the game, the Empire is engaged in a brutal civil war, with three factions vying for power: the North Empire, the South Empire, and the West Empire. Based on the Byzantines from ancient history, the Empire seems to resemble the Vlandians, specializing in heavy infantry and cavalry. From ancient history, however, where the Vlandians' tactics is to mow down the enemy with charge after charge of heavy horse, the Empire requires a more tactical, opportunistic approach. Unlike the Vlandian heavy horse, whose knights carry shields, Hello YouTube and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today we are covering the final faction in our lore series, covering all the factions in Mountblade Bannerlord. Today's topic is the Empire. If you haven't seen the rest of these videos, I strongly suggest checking them out, as I have covered each and every faction, and there's a lot of interesting information for each one. But with that in mind, let's dive on in and learn all there is to know about the Empire, the once great but now declining faction that at one point almost controlled all of Calradia. At the start of the game, the Empire is engaged in a brutal civil war, with three factions vying for power: the North Empire, the South Empire, and the West Empire. Based on the Byzantines from ancient history, the Empire seems to resemble the Vlandians, specializing in heavy infantry and cavalry. However, where the Vlandians' tactics is to mow down the enemy with charge after charge of heavy horse, the Empire requires a more tactical, opportunistic approach. Unlike the Vlandian heavy horse, whose knights carry shields and one-handed lances, the Empire heavy cavalrymen carry large two-handed lances and no shields, as is normal for cataphracts. This leaves them open to volleys of arrows during a charge. However, if you're tactical about your approach and don't leave your horse units open to ranged fire, you can decimate your foes. So as I mentioned before, the Northern Empire, the Western Empire, and the Southern Empire are the three pieces that make up the Empire faction in Mountblade Bannerlord. Each empire has its own leader and certain unique features, but for the most part the culture is the same. So I will go through each one of the leaders and territories, but military and cultural information will be universal. So let's start off with the Northern Empire. The Northern Empire shares a border with the Battanians, Sturgians, and Khuzaits, as well as the two other splinter states resulting from the splitting of the Calradic Empire. This empire is led by an influential senator who wants the Senate to resume its right to appoint the new emperor. His name is Senator Lucan. Senator Lucan Astakos is the ruler of the Northern Empire, leader of the Astakos clan, and a claimant to the emperor of the Calradic Empire. During the reign of Emperor Neretzes, Lucan served as a junior officer as part of the emperor's staff, participating in the Battle of Pendraic. As the Sturgians stormed the imperial camp, Lucan escaped as part of Arenikos' group of soldiers back to safety. The northern third of the empire is ruled by Lucan, who represents a long-standing oligarchic trend in imperial politics. It holds that strict adherence to imperial law is the best guarantee that the empire will not become a tyranny. Oligarchs like Lucan also tend to believe that only landowners can have the extensive education, experience in government, and stake in property to really understand and appreciate the law, and thus the Senate should be supreme. Lucan favors a return to an oligarchic Senate, and is politically opposed to the militant populism of Darius, while fundamentally opposed to the hereditary monarchy of Regalia. His two imperial contenders. Senators found themselves confronted with populist radicals who would do away with the oligarchy, or feudal aristocrats who would back an absolute monarch and do away with the Senate. Thus, the Senate elected Lucan as emperor, despite the military and aristocracy separately raising their own claimants, drawing the border for a three-way civil war that would follow. Lucan's claim to unify Calradia as emperor relies on him holding the support of what remains of the imperial Senate. Because of their support, Lucan asserts that he is the only one with legal precedent to be emperor, and Istiana validates this claim in the main questline, referencing that Lucan understands the empire's laws and traditions better than any of his opponents, making Lucan, by most accounts, the most viable claimant to the imperial seat. So let's move on to the Southern Empire. The Southern Empire shares a border with the Azerai, Khuzaits, and the Vlandians, as well as the two other splinter states resulting from the splitting of the Calradic Empire. This empire is ruled by Regaia Petros, the widow of Emperor Arenikos, who claims the throne for her daughter Ira, the only child of the late emperor. Empress Regaia Petros is the ruler of the Southern Empire, leader of the Petros clan, and a claimant to the Empress of the Calradic Empire. Regaea is widowed and was the wife of Arenikos, the late emperor, who was suspiciously murdered. She is considered by Istiana to be the cleverest of the three imperial claimants. Besides being the widow of Arenikos, she is the mother of his daughter Ira, now her own heir apparent. The southern third of the empire is ruled by Regaea, widow of the murdered emperor. For her, politics is personal. All men want their families to inherit what they have, and if you loved Arenikos, then you will support the right of his heirs. Arenikos was indeed loved, and also there are some Calradians who believe that the endless squabbling and civil wars can only be overcome by a king, or, if necessary, by a queen. Regaea favors a hereditary monarchy over the imperial title, with a more feudal system of absolute governance under the emperor. Regaea believes politics and history is defined by the law of succession, hereditary claims and dynasties that define right from wrong, and believe that the Calradic Civil War is a result of the fundamental law being broken to prevent her and her daughter Ira from succeeding the popular emperor Arenikos. Regaea's claim to unify Calradia as empress is purely feudal, and the matter of contention that sparked the Calradian Civil War. As Emperor Arenikos was assassinated before he could select his heir, or whether there would be an heir at all, as the Senate traditionally appointed emperors, Regaea asserts that, as his wife and the mother of Ira, whom he might have been grooming to rule, she is the rightful empress, and the only claimant whose succession is not a matter of ambition, but purely civic duty. And lastly, we move on to the Western Empire. The Western Empire shares a border with the Britannians and Vlandians, as well as the two other splinter states resulting from the splitting of the Calradic Empire. This empire is led by a veteran who wants the veterans of the empire to choose the new emperor themselves. Garios Kamnos is the ruler of the Western Empire, the leader of the Kamnos clan, and a claimant to the emperor of the Calradic Empire. During the reign of Emperor Neretzes, Garios was a soldier who fought in the Battle of Pendraic, and barely escaped with his life, allegedly hiding in the woods with his fellow survivors to escape their Britannian persecutors. He views this experience as the formative movement behind his later populist ascendancy as emperor claimant in the Calradic Civil War. The western third of the empire is ruled by Garios, a charismatic general who represents a long-standing populist trend in imperial politics. He is deeply loved by his soldiers, both for his solid record in winning battles and for his insistence that his veterans be compensated in land afterwards. He often demands that the people should settle key issues, but in practice, this usually means an assembly of his soldiers, where his veterans can be counted on to shut down opposition. Garios represents the populist faction of the Calradic Empire, and has the backing of most of the former empire's more esteemed soldiers and commanders. During the waning days of the empire, he allegedly pushed for key reforms such as veteran land grants and popular trial by assembly, as these policies were likely blocked or gridlocked by the oligarchic forces of the Senate and feudal influences of the aristocracy and former emperors. His ascendancy as claimant for the empire is likely a combination of his popularity with the imperial armies and his populist political agenda. Garios' claim to unify Calradia as emperor is based on his own disdain for his predecessors and the Senate. He blames much of the empire's recent decline on incompetent oligarchs and aristocrats, whose ancient laws and traditions keep them in power by right of blood or wealth, rather than merit, intellect, or ability. Despite this, though, Garios is purportedly opposed to the oligarchic puppet Lucan and the aristocratic agitator Regaea. Garios supposedly governs his own third of the empire by force of his army, and is described as putting down opposition with his soldiers. Thus, Garios, separate from both Lucan and Regaea, who rely on tradition and inheritance respectively, believes in the law of might makes right as his basis for being emperor. The Calradic Empire is not a monarchy. The Calradians insist on this. The emperor, formerly just a military commander, may have taken on most other affairs of state as well. Rather than be elected every few years by the Senate, he may now rule for life, and often be succeeded by his son. The popular assemblies that once divided key policies may have withered away, and the Senate, a gathering of landowners, may have far less power than it did in centuries past. But it is not a monarchy, because it is absolutely forbidden for Calradians to be ruled by a king. The empire is what happens when a league of city-states conquers a continent. A community once led by free farmers with relatively equal wealth now has vast gaps between the rich and the poor. Institutions designed to prevent one man from becoming a tyrant come into conflict with the necessities of unending warfare, which require unified command. Without any smooth means of succession, the death of an emperor has always been a potential crisis. Usually the emperor nominated an heir, the Senate ratified his choice, and the people, meaning the army, acclaimed it. But this did not always happen smoothly, and the succession was often settled on the battlefield. The current conflict which broke out when the late Emperor Irenicos was assassinated is the latest of these imperial civil wars. As far as territories go, the Northern Empire has 6 towns, 8 castles, and 11 villages. The Southern Empire has 7 towns, 7 castles, and 32 villages. The Western Empire has 6 towns, 8 castles, and 31 villages. So it should be easy to tell that the North definitely starts out with the weakest territory and infrastructure-wise, and the Southern Empire starts out in the best position. The Empire is a well-rounded faction and one of the easiest factions to play. You normally get dropped into Empire territories. They also boast strong, diverse infantry with high armor and a nice balance between one-handed and two-handed troops. As far as military strengths go, they have well-armored archer units with the option to go for Palatine Guards, one of the best archers in the game, or very well-trained crossbowmen that are also very well armored. Overall, they have a very diverse fighting force, and although they are not perfect, they do, for the most part, hold their own against the other strongest units in the game. In addition to this, as a specialist troop, elite cataphracts, the highest level cavalry in the Empire, are one of, if not the best lancer troops in the entire game. They have deadly charges, but do lack maneuverability. But what they lack in maneuverability, they make up for in high damage and strong armor. The Empire also has the added advantage of the Imperial Legionary troop, which is, by most accounts, the all-around best heavy infantry troop in the game. As far as military weaknesses go, the Empire does have limited options in the light cavalry or mounted skirmisher department, having really only one option, that being the Imperial Fusilieri, a mounted archer. On the bright side, they are an excellent unit with fast horses, accurate bows, and durable, comprehensive full-body armor. Their other weaknesses is their polearm units, the Imperial Elite Manavliaton. Despite having great armor, good weapons, and overall good stats, they lack one thing that can be a significant weakness depending on the situation. Namely, they ain't got no shields. Overall, militarily, the Empire is the easiest faction to play as when it comes to combat, because their army is so well-rounded and can be recruited from any military settlement, not just the faction you're a member of. As previously mentioned, the Calratic Empire is loosely based on the Byzantine Empire, also known as the Eastern Roman Empire. The Byzantine Empire was a vast and powerful civilization with origins that can be traced to 330 AD, when the Roman Emperor Constantine I dedicated a new Rome on the site of the ancient Greek colony of Byzantium. Though the western half of the Roman Empire crumbled and fell in 476 AD, the eastern half survived for 1,000 more years, spawning a rich tradition of art, literature, and learning, and serving as a military buffer between Europe and Asia. The Byzantine Empire finally fell in 1453, after an Ottoman army stormed Constantinople during the reign of Constantine XI. So that does it for this lore video about the Empire from Mountain Blade Bannerlord. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful in answering any questions you may have had, or just helping explain what these lamellar-wearing, scale-obsessed lunatics are all about. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you liked this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.
The Calradian Empire has been in a long state of decay. Invasions have weakened the Empire, and their enemies have been taking land piece by piece. Internal strife has also left Calradians in a vulnerable state. To make a bad situation worse, the Calradian Emperor Irenicos has just been murdered by an unknown assassin, and due to his reluctance to name an heir, the whole empire has exploded into a civil war. To the north, the Calradian Senate under the leadership of Lucan claimed to be the true heirs to the empire and wished to restore the ancient rule by Senate. Before his death, Emperor Irenicos had supported republican ideals of the past and empowered the nobles of the Senate. The Southern Empire is led by the widow of Emperor Irenicos, Empress Regaea, who claims that hereditary rule is the only legitimate choice and that the Emperor's daughter should rule once she comes of age. The Western Empire is commanded by Gyarios, a prominent general who fought against the enemies of Calradia his entire life. His men rallied around him in his call for imperial conquest, and they believe that he should rule because only he is strong enough to defend the empire. With a new civil war already started, the weakened empire is in a precarious position. Far to the south is the Sultanate of Azurai, ruled by Sultan Unquid, who rules over the Bronze Desert called Nahasa. The lands of Azurai were recently a collection of various rulers, each with their own petty fiefdoms. But with the weakened empire to their north, they have band together as a confederacy, electing a sultan from among the richest clan. The surrounding desert acts as a shield of aggression from the empire, who wouldn't dare send their legions to be harassed by the expert Azurai cavalry and be cut off from their own supply lines. Instead, the empire has previously suppressed the Azurai by establishing power in the region through making clients and allies among the clans, keeping them divided among themselves. Now that the Azurai are united, they look poised for conquest, but the Sultan must always be wary of the many other ambitious clans. In the dense forest northwest of the empire is the home of the Battanians, who are the native people to most of Calradia. The Battanian people are strong warriors and are masters of archery and ambush attacks, an essential combination as they have been subject to relentless raids and invasions from neighbors in every direction. Throughout the long history of Battania, there has always been the crowned High King at the capital of Dunmanog. Their current High King is Caladog. Their High King is a fierce warrior, and like many of his people, he idolizes valor above all else. But the position of High King holds less authority than many other rulers. It's said that if you go to any Battanian hill fort and ask the local noble, "Whose kingdom do you live in?" his reply would be, "Mine, of course." The High King Caladog has made efforts to centralize power and increase his authority, but time will tell if it's enough to stabilize the Battanians against their numerous foes. To the far north in the frozen woodlands is the warlike people of Sturgia, who have mastered raiding with their excellent swordsmen and axemen. The many different cultures that make up Sturgia joined into a confederation just 100 years ago. Though Sturgians are fiercely against monarchy, they are led by a prince named Ragenbad. The title prince was traditionally used for military leaders, but in recent years has effectively come to mean king. Over the last centuries, Sturgia has grown rich from trade, with people venturing from the south to purchase honey, iron, and most importantly, furs. Their woodlands have proven to be a very valuable resource, as the fur trade has founded many major towns along the rivers, which saw huge economic growth from the trade. Ironically, their own wealthy lands could be the target of many raiders. On the western coast is the Kingdom of Vlandia, ruled by King Derthert. The Vlandian people are not natives to Calradia and came from overseas to seek their fortune as mercenaries. They came to be known as Vlandians after their most famous warlord, Viland the Bold, or Valandian in Calradic, gained fame throughout Calradia. Not long ago, the Vlandians were loyal mercenaries to the Empire. Their heavy cavalry fought alongside the Empire's soldiers against the Azurai, the Battanians, and other enemies. As time went on, the Empire could no longer afford to pay large amounts of silver to their Vlandian mercenaries. Instead, the Emperor would pay in land. But over time, the Vlandians occupying this land formed families, built houses, farms, and fortresses, and became a very powerful faction within the Empire. When the time came, it was relatively easy for King Ulsric Ironarm to rally his barons and declare himself king. He captured the old imperial capital of Baravanos and secured much of the Western Empire. Now, with the Empire once again in shambles, the Vlandians may again take more of the Empire, but internal strife between the Rhodoks and the Nords may prove a challenge. In the eastern steppe is the Khuzaites, renowned for their horsemen and their archers who've prospered from raiding the Empire. The Empire had not taken these raids lightly. Many ambitious would-be Khans ended up perishing from the blades of an assassin, or found themselves at the mercy of another ambitious clan paid by the Empire. However, just 2 generations ago there was major change. Due Due to another conqueror rising further east, the nomadic tribes consolidated under the rule of Khan Urkun and expanded westward rather than be crushed in the eastern conquest. Now the land that the Khuzaits once raided is the land they call home, and after the death of the Great Khan, the stability amongst the various clans has lessened. His descendant Khan Munchug still rules, but many of the clan leaders have aspirations to become the next Khan. Thank you for watching. I'll be hosting a Bannerlord giveaway starting in the next few days, so stick around to be notified for that. Hope to see you next time. Goodbye. The Legion of the Betrayed are the last remnants of the Empire's standing army. Before Emperor Arenikos had died, he abolished the Empire's standing army and instituted a new law requiring the nobles of the Empire to have their own private armies. It was a popular law with the nobles as they got more power, and it was cheaper for the Emperor, who now didn't have to pay for the upkeep of the Empire's armies. But the Legion of the Betrayed detested this change. They loved the old traditions of the Empire, their standards, and their legion's history. To them, this new system was the reason why the Empire was being destroyed. Now, the Legion is a shadow of its former self. They have been left to find work as mercenaries for anyone who pays, working for both Imperial and foreign lords alike. The Hidden Hand are one of the many minor factions in the Calradian Empire. They are a criminal organization and they operate in the rural areas south of the Empire. By donating large payments of gold and helping to silence political enemies, they have allied themselves with many of the most powerful merchants and senators in the Empire. Many members of the Hidden Hand spend much of the year pretending to live a respectable life in cities as traders, with the knowledge that even if somebody finds out their goods are stolen, the authorities are paid well to look the other way. While not living in cities and being traders of stolen goods, they are often working as bandits actively stealing goods, or extorting locals under the guise of offering protection. The Aleftheroi, otherwise known as the Free People, are the descendants of runaway slaves and wanderers of the Empire. They have settled on the Khuzait frontier and over decades have began to live very similar lives to the Khuzaits. As time has passed, the Empire has found it increasingly useful to hire this ragtag group of soldiers for their knowledge of the frontier. Under the contracts of the Empire, the leaders of the Free People have become enormously wealthy and powerful. But even though this group now owes loyalty to the Empire, they often remain hostile towards the authority that the Empire has over them. The Embers of the Flame have been a prominent religious faction of the Empire for nearly a century. After the saintly teenage Emperor Jerusalem was killed and overthrown by one of his generals, the Embers of the Flame rebelled against the Empire and have been extorting the local populace to survive. They claim to be waiting for heaven to resurrect Jerusalem and bring about a great cleansing of the land, which will bring the Empire into a new good again. The Wolfskins are a warrior society with a long tradition of battalion. Many of the most famous Battanian warlords and nobles have been a part of the society, where the members live like wolves. To be a member of the Wolfskins, you must wear no sewn clothes, eat no cooked food, and sleep under no roof. As long as you are a member of the Wolfskins, you are immune from being prosecuted for war. And surprisingly, it has become a common occurrence for Wolfskins to watch travelers and caravans and to commit crimes which they cannot return. The Stoldergruppe, or the Shield Brothers, are a highly skilled mercenary company with family ties to the Prince of Sturdy. To join the Shield Brothers, you need to be vouched for by an already existing member. This mercenary company takes melee training very seriously, and they have trained some of the best infantry Calradia has to offer. Inside their camp, life is almost monastic. They allow no women within the encampment, allow no amusements such as gambling, and forbid any member of the company from spending the night outside of their encampment without special permission. On the marshes of the Great Northern Lake in Sturdy are the Lakers. Their ranks are mostly made up of fugitives, criminals who would rather live as thieves than exploit. The make their living from what they call rescue, which is done by luring ships onto the shores with fake beacons and lighthouses. After they plunder the loot from the ship, they either kill or ransom the crew. The ships themselves are taken apart to construct a wooden shaft. The Lake Rats are undoubtedly one of the most violent and lawless organizations in Calradia. The Sons of the Forest, or the Forest People, are a militarized, semi-nomadic group of farmers who practice slash-and-burn farming. The slash-and-burn method is extremely damaging to the land. It's done by burning down a portion of the forest and using the nutrient-rich soil to produce better crops. This type of farming requires far less labor, but it makes the land useless after just a few years. Once the land is exhausted, they move on. And by burning in remote regions where their soldiers are able to withstand the local militias, they're able to get away with paying no tax on their illegally claimed land. The Jawal, or the Roamers, are Bedouin nomads that claim to be Azerai's protectors of the old ways, and they compose poems to mock the other clans of the Azerai who gave up the freedom of their tents for stone houses. The Jawal Confederacy claims a huge amount of the Nahasa Desert to be their territory, and they demand steep fines for any traveler or caravan passing through their lands. To most of the Azerai, they're considered more of a nuisance than the protectors of the old lands. The Gilman are a mercenary company from Azeroth comprised of slave soldiers. In fact, you cannot even enter the service of the Gilman without first selling yourself into slavery. Despite being slaves, their members are often quite wealthy. They wear fine silk clothes, use exotic perfumes, and have expensive purebred horses. The Gilman are considered by most Calradians to be some of the finest cavalry around, but they truly excel as horse artists and are without doubt the best that you can find. The Beni Zalal are located in Azeroth and are self-proclaimed keepers of the secret who watch from the shadows. They are certainly living up to their self-proclamation of watching from the shadows, as not much is known about the Beni Zalal. We know that their ranks are made up of soldiers from all walks of life, from slaves to nobles, but their purpose and goals are unknown to anyone outside of their organization. The Company of the Golden Boar is Vlandia's biggest mercenary company. Their ranks are mostly made up of levies who don't adjust well to civilian life. Their troops are undisciplined and violent, and as such, they're a scourge to any of the countryside that they temporarily settle in. But they do have redeeming qualities. Their members are famously expert crossbowmen, and they hone their skills on a daily basis. They're also known for valuing their contracts and will never break a contract, no matter how bad the odds may be. The Brotherhood of the Woods is a long-running rebel movement in Vlandia, where the peasants fled from villages and towns to the woods to rob from the rich and give to the poor. But like most rebel organizations, it has evolved over time due to desperation into making use of extortion, terror, and deals with corrupt officials to survive. Now, the Brotherhood of the Woods are little different than any other bandit group. The Karakuzates are a clan of Kuzates that are fiercely loyal to their old traditions and refuse to integrate into the new ways of life, no matter what security or riches submitting to a Khan might bring. To this clan, living in cities and castles would mean giving up their freedom. They would be forced to pay tributes and give up their best soldiers as levies to the Khan. Without anyone above them, they are free to raid, kidnap, and steal from the Empire or anywhere else that they see fit. So, now you know the lore and history behind the minor factions, let me know which minor faction is your favorite. As always, thanks for watching, I hope to see you next time, goodbye.
Hello YouTube and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today we are covering the final faction in our lore series, covering all the factions in Mount & Blade Bannerlord. Today's topic is the Empire. If you haven't seen the rest of these videos, I strongly suggest checking them out, as I have covered each and every faction, and there's a lot of interesting information for each one. But with that in mind, let's dive on in and learn all there is to know about the Empire. the once great but now declining faction that at one point almost controlled all of Calradia. At the start of the game, the Empire is engaged in a brutal civil war, with three factions vying for power. The North Empire